Hey guys, what's up? It's Samantha, and today I'm going to be memory keeping the week of November 2nd through the 8th, which was election week here in the US. And quite frankly, as you will see in this spread, I was a dumpster fire basket case the entire week, as I'm sure many other people were, and was quite relieved when Saturday rolled around and with how things ended up playing out. But I was a hot mess this week and did not read a ton, especially coming off of the insane week I had last week. If you've seen that plan with me, you know that I had read 9 books the previous week. This week I only read 4 books, but one of the books I read twice. So yeah, I don't have a ton to talk about in terms of what I read, but this week was just a lot. It was also staff development day at the library I work for on Friday. So because I only work 3 days a week and I had to be there on Friday, which is a day I don't normally work, I took Tuesday off, which I was okay with. I kind of didn't want to be working with the public on election day. So I am glad I got to avoid that drama and all that kind of stuff. So I was not upset about that. But Tuesday, I was just a dumpster fire. And I did start watching The Queen's Gambit this week. I started watching it on Tuesday night. I watched Pride and Prejudice, which is my go-to comfort movie. And then I put on The Queen's Gambit, and it actually distracted me from what was going on. So I watched the whole show during this week, I think, pretty much, and I loved it. I thought it was an awesome, awesome show, and I loved the clothing in it, which I don't normally watch TV show for fashion, but I really enjoyed the set styling and the clothing and just everything about it. I really enjoyed quite a bit. If you haven't seen it, I thought it was great. Joe actually really liked it too. We don't usually have the same taste in TV shows, but I do have to say The Queen's Gambit was top notch. And I will also say this kit that I'm using from Scribble Prints Co. you are going to see again, because I used it for inauguration week in my main planner, and I saved the scraps from both that spread and this spread, and I'm going to do this kit again for inauguration week in my memory keeping planner as well. And I did headers for this week because honestly, when I was filming this, I was not wanting to futz around with all the little deco bits. So I was like, you know what, I'll just save the deco bits for inauguration week and just do the headers this week, because I'd have to do headers one of the weeks. So we're just going with headers this week. And I was feeling lazy and pulled in lots of Silver Star foil overlay stuff from Scribble Prints Co. I just really love this kit. This is my favorite color combination. This is the color combination that all of my kitchen stuff is, like all my dishes and bakeware and serving pieces are this color combination, because I really love this color combination. Also reminds me of a mashup of the old planner June and July colors. If you've been around the planner community for a while, you know about the monthly colors, and these were always my favorite monthly colors. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the books that I read this week. So the first book is the one that I read twice, and it was The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nghi. And I love this so much. I read it twice. I actually only rated this a 4.5 out of 5 stars, but I was just so captivated by this. I read it once and then immediately was like, I need to read this again, because I am sure that I missed half of the nuance. So basically, we're following a monk, and they have just left their monastery, and they have this owl-esque companion owl, like the bird, and I'm blanking on what the owl's name was, but the owl kind of remembers and records things for the monk, and the monk has gone out from the Singing Hills Monastery, because it's called the Singing Hills something. The name of the series has Singing Hills in it, and that's the monastery that the monk has come from. and the monk goes to this kind of magical house and lake that has been sealed off from the world for a certain amount of time, and they are able to go to this go to this house and discover what happened there. And there is an old lady who is also at the house, and the old lady starts telling the monk stories about what happened in the past in this house and how it relates to the Empress and stuff with that. I don't really want to say anything else without spoiling it, but she tells a bunch of stories, and then at the end of every story, she asks something to the effect of, "Do you understand?" And she never comes out and says things, and that's part of why it was a book that needed to be reread, because you got to the end and you kind of know what happens, and then going back and rereading it, I was able to see how things all connected together to tell the full story. There's a lot of subtext going on in what the old lady is saying, and so it's just this beautiful, I don't know, like, it was just a wonderful story. It's kind of weird. It's a novella. It's queer. It's just basically everything that I love in weird adult fantasy novellas. It was wonderful. Also, if you're looking to pick up a fantasy story that's inspired by Asian culture and is written by an Asian author in his own voices, pick this up. It's just wonderful. I love this book so much. So, like I said, I read that twice, and then I realized that the arc for the second novella in the series was up on NetGalley, and that is When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, and I immediately downloaded that and read that as well, and I loved this one even more. I gave this a full 5 out of 5 stars. It was so wonderful. This is a book about kind of truth in storytelling and how who is telling the story, like what perspective, like how perspective changes how you tell a story. And in this book, the monk is going up a mountain, and there's a snowstorm, and they are set upon by tigers, but the tigers can talk, and the monk proposes, in order to not be eaten by the tiger, that they tell the tigers a story, and then if the tigers are pleased with the story, they won't eat them. And the monk starts telling the tigers a story about a woman who was married to a tiger, and I believe that is inspired by an actual, like, a folklore story. And except in this book, the tiger is also a woman. So again, like, all the books in this series are queer, and just, it's great. The monk is non-binary as well, and I love everything about these books so much. And so the monk starts telling the tigers this story, and then the tigers interrupt to tell how they think it went down and what they heard, like how the tigers have told the story and the different perspective on that. And I loved it so much. You can't see me just like flailing my arms around right now, but I loved this book so much and how it played with perspective and storytelling. It was just amazing, and I am eagerly anticipating the next novella in the series. Nevo also has a novel coming out that is a Great Gatsby retelling that I have an arc of that I am hoping to pick up very, very soon, and I think it comes out this summer, and I'm just new favorite author for me. And then the last book that I read was a very hyped YA fantasy, and that was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I'd actually had an arc of this, and I had started my arc and got about 20% into it and DNF'd it, and I'm actually glad that I DNF'd the arc because I found out afterwards that there were some very substantial plot changes to the story from the arc to the finished copy. The author actually said that if you only read the arc, that you need to reread the finished copy before you read the next book because it's not going to make sense if you just jumped from the arc to the next book in the series. So I'm fine with that. I also feel like I stopped right around the 100-page mark, and that is right around the point. If I had read one more chapter, it picked up substantially after that point. I would say like the first little bit felt a little info dumpy, a little slow to start, but the rest of this book, the back 80%, was fabulous. This was top-notch YA fantasy. This deals with some really heavy topics. We follow our main character, Bree, whose mother has recently passed away, and she is accepted into an early college program on the UNC Chapel Hill campus. So she is, I believe, a senior in high school, and she and her best friend both applied to this program. So they're living in a designated dorm for the high school program, and she's attending college classes as a high schooler. There's actually a program very similar to this at a university near where I work, and the early college kids come to the library during the day to like hang out and study. So I'm familiar with programs like this. So that was cool to see that in a book. And then she, at her first night at this program, they go to a college party, and she sees someone be attacked by a magical creature. And she sees people fighting back against this magical creature, and she kind of discovers that there's a secret society on campus that is involved with like descendants from the Knights of the Round Table and King Arthur's court. So there's Arthurian legend, and how, you know, obviously we know that Bree is like not a standard teenager, that there's something she can see, the magic stuff, she knows what's going on. And so she has questions that she's trying to find out, you know, that maybe her mother's death, which was very sudden, has, you know, there's some suspicion behind that maybe magic was somehow involved in her mother's death, and kind of uncovering her mother's history. And it digs into systemic racism and white supremacy and the very real lasting effects of slavery, particularly in the South and on communities of color in the South, and how that legacy is still present. It deals with intergenerational trauma and how we, you know, hand our trauma, how trauma is handed down from person to person, from mother to child. And it's, this book is just so good. Like, if there's one YA book, if you're someone who's like, I don't read YA fantasy, if I could convince you to pick up this book, get past the first 100 pages, this is just a wonderful story, and I'm very excited for the next one. And I think Tracy Deonn is an author to watch. I think she is gonna be like one of those names that's up there, like in, you know, 30 years when people talk about fantasy greats. I think her name's, that might be premature to say, but I think her name is gonna be up there. The hype is real around this book. I gave it like a 4.5 out of 5 stars just because I found the beginning to be a little slow, and there's also a lot of use of Welsh words that kind of had my head spinning. I didn't particularly like the inclusion of that, but everything else about this was just excellent. So I'm done gushing now, but this is the finished spread for this hot mess, hellacious week, and I really, really love how it turned out. Like I said, I love all of the colors in this kit, and I love all of the silver foil, and, you know, the week ended on a higher note than it began, so that was nice. By the end of the week, it was, you know, a lot better. Oh, and I got my period in the middle of the week too, so that's always great when you're like already having an existential crisis, and then you get your period in the middle of it too. But yeah, as always, the shops that I use frequently are linked in the description down below, along with my Instagram if you want to follow me, see my life, see what I'm reading, see what I'm planning, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you in my next video. Bye!